map selection. Oh, it was up, it went away. We are going back to Nepal, so no surprise there. Let's talk, you briefly mentioned Dalton. Dalton and Nero are kind of star players that are really standing out on Toronto. Where do you see them kind of falling in this matchup? Because this is one of the matchups that you guys were looking forward to.
Right, and I mean, look, Dalton is one thing that he gives Toronto Esports is he gives them an excellent Widow option. When you look back at the last matchup, you didn't really have either team with a great Widow option. That's why Enlair came in at the end, because they went, okay, we'll have you be the Widow specialist, but that has problems. The upside to Dalton is that he can be a great Widow while also doing other things, and that gives Toronto a decent edge in Widow gameplay, but again, they have to deal with the tank line of Gladiators, which is very fearsome.
Yeah, last week in their matchup against LNL, Dalton really didn't have a problem at all, but we did see him stumble a little bit in their first matchup against XL2. Towards the end, he ramped it up, and he was able to perform for his team. So we'll see. Will Panker be able to mitigate that kind of damage that comes out from Dalton's play?
Where are you seeing these teams, either one of them kind of ending up in these rosters as far as where their standings are going to be in the series?
Right now, Gladiators is going to be #1 in their group until someone else proves otherwise. They are incredibly good. The #2 team is probably XL2, so they're looking excellent.
All right, well, let's go ahead and get into the game. We're moving over to Nepal, and we're going to see how it shapes up with this very first matchup between Toronto Esports and the Gladiators Legion.
That is correct. Do not believe the overlay. The overlay merely lies to you. Optic Energy, they played last night. I'm sure they'll be fixed shortly. But instead, it is going to be Gladiators on the red, and it is going to be Toronto in the blue.
Yeah, we didn't talk about it before, but Pumple is out. Axiom is in for him. So Korean tank swaps coming out for Toronto Esports. We'll see if that makes a difference for Toronto, especially having to face off against someone like Panker now. Panker goes into the back, right on top of the Zen. Shu will go down.
Again, Panker just has this ridiculous game sense where when he dives on a support, it's generally going to fall. He gets focused out towards the end, but the damage has been done. Panker, even when he does a trade, does it really well, and Legion going to take first control.
And that was a blind dive, too. He didn't know where the Zenyatta was. He had someone else calling it out for him, and he just made it. He had the perfect angle, too, landed right on top of him, and that is what you're expecting out of a world-class Winston. Now, Gladiators Legion, they have control of the point already. 17% as Dalton now is going to make his way onto it.
Dalton is moving in and around. Narrow lucky to get out. Narrow is actually getting chased by Panker in the beginning. Oh my goodness, Corey out of nowhere, moving in the Dalton, but Dalton's able to get the health pack. That lets him shift back the other way. Actually puts some pressure on the other end, but it's too much from the fight there. Too much support, and Panker gets focused down. Panker gets caught out for once, and Toronto, they deal with the problem. Now they can move in. They have plenty of room to work with, and you look at the Legion as they just have to back out, but no, the flankers, they get two. They might be pulling it back. No Panker required.
Dalton, though, still trying to keep this alive for Toronto Esports, but he's dropped down to 45 HP. He's got no support behind it. So Corey and Blase clean that all up and keep it alive. Things looked great. Dalton was in the back, and he actually had the attention of so many members. We saw that the Orb of Harmony was actually onto Corey, keeping him topped off, and that's why Panker didn't have that extra support to keep him alive in the front line now. It's all reset, as Rolf is going to be the only one with the ultimate on the side of Gladiators, but it doesn't matter. Corey starts it off. Shu is gone again.
And that was Panker and Corey together. They got Shu in the beginning. Panker, though, gives up his life. So you see Toronto, they've done their work. They're focusing Panker harder than any other team has here before. They use the barrier, and they move in. But they're not able to get much from it. Axiom ends up being a little bit far out. Dalton moving in and around, trying to break the other way. Bus bomb out, does not connect in the middle of three, but the three all go away. Arrow, late blade into the fight. Not going to get much due to the Transcendence. Got gods before he could read back. But Toronto still in the position of having to back out.
We do have a Transcendence. This has been one long, protracted fight as Toronto Esports have to make their way back onto the point. It's almost in overtime now. Dalton hasn't been able to find much here with this Tracer yet, but he is starting to force them back. Corey still in the back with the help of Panker taking out Shu.
Panker's getting chased down by Lucio now, and Cruz gets him. Cruz finishes him off, doesn't let Panker scrape away with 10 HP. Meanwhile, Blase going to be trying to carry some of the load here, moving in and out. The blade up, doesn't get too much in the end, but it's Corey again on the flank, picks off 3 before he's all said and done. Corey chewing through people right now, and Legion showing a different side of themselves here, where we've seen heavy focus on Panker, but Corey and Blase don't seem to be very concerned.
Yeah, I mean, that's great, right? That's what the tanks is supposed to do. They're supposed to take the primary brunt of that focus now. Overtime ticking away as they are getting back onto the point are Toronto Esports, but they don't have much behind it. Nero almost has a blade, but he's not able to build it up yet. 99% before he falls. Gladiators stand strong. They'll walk away with Shrine.
And even though Toronto had moments there where it looked like they were going to make something happen, you have ridiculousness like Cruz chasing down a 10 HP Panker. Didn't really amount to much. It was still a very dominant showing from Legion, 100 to 8. Pretty rough.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Panker is supposed to draw the aggro as the tank. He's got the HP to do it. That leaves Blase and Corey alive to do so much damage, and they were doing so much work. We've seen them more on the kill feed today than we have Panker, and so that is actually a statement.
Now, note as we move in the Sanctum, Panker is forced to get off of the Winston and go onto the Theresa. His Theresa isn't bad by any means, but this is something that sort of forces the rest of Legion to do more. But hey, when Corey and Blase can do that much in and around the outskirts when they have that much space made, it's still looking like a pretty good day for the Legion.
Look at Toronto, though. Nero gonna go onto the Pharah. Dalton picking up the Widowmaker. Guardian is on that Roadhog. So damage aplenty coming out from Toronto Esports, but will they have enough to deal with the Orisa barrier on the opposite end? And along with Gods, he's on the Diva, so they're playing a more defensive setup coming out from Gladiators.
They came real close to demecking Gods there, set up by the halt by Axiom. Dalton was there. If that had been a headshot, that would have been it. Meanwhile, the Legion working their way in. You see Panker gonna be looking for a halt here in just a second. Goes for the pit, doesn't connect, and instead a little bit over aggro, ends up dying. Both Orisas out of the fight, and there will be no shields for either team here. Instead, you see Diva getting DMAC. Dalton working the Widow in the back, and this is giving Toronto an edge as Corey just gets flicked on.
And so Toronto will be able to take control of the point first now. Neither Orisa is able to do much but just stand on the point. It was Axiom able to make it back there. Now Nero with this Pharah will be lurking along this wall here, waiting for the Gladiators come in, unsuspecting of the Pharah in the sky.
He's just creeping there on the top. Nero waiting to make it rain. The Legion moving on forward. Nero still on the top, waiting for his opportunity. There's the halt, trying to set things up. Nero still in over, and Panker's already picked off. There's the barrage from Nero. Long have we waited, and maybe should have waited a little bit more. He ends up dying, but it's enough to demec Gods, and it's still putting the Legion in a rough spot.
Putting Legion in a tough spot indeed, especially with Blase coming in with that Riptire now. Transcendence will be used by Toronto Esports. They want to hold on to this. That allows Guardian to at least get that frag onto Panker, but Corey coming alive now, swapping off onto the Widowmaker himself.
And that's the key. He was able to get rid of the Dalton. The Widow threat is gone. Blase off the tire did enough getting the early pickoff. And now Corey looking for Nero on the top, but being measured. Still applying pressure on the bottom. Axiom is out. Blase leading the bombs into a point, and Guardian's out of there. Legion have clawed their way back into this point.
They will flip it. Toronto only securing 61% now. Axiom swapping off from that Orisa along with Guardian. They're just going to go with the Winston Diva dive now. Try to apply more pressure onto Corey here, but they have so much peel out from Gladiators Legion. They have to be expert in this dive coming out from Toronto as it's wholesale changes coming out. Nero on the Genji now. Dalton picking up that Tracer once again.
And the problem with these wholesale changes is that they're going to be behind an ult, which gives Legion an even bigger advantage. Oh my goodness, Corey's so close to getting picked off. Dalton just needed a little bit more, a little bit closer, and that would have been it. Still, going deeper, supported by his tanks in this particular moment, but Rolf caught him on the side. One Zen Orb to the face, all required with a little bit of kicks as well.
And Cruz had used the Valkyrie into that fight also, so now they have to wait for that to build up. As Gladiators Legion, 40% now. They've established themselves. They'll possibly get another fight out of this. I mean, they do have Blase with that Riptire, so that should stall out Toronto for another fight.
I think it will. Blase has been very good in his judgment on Riptires so far. And even if it's just one is all you need. You don't have to get gritty. Speaking of tires, a tire now out. It's really early though, so perhaps we just cursed him. You see the retreat coming in. Blase though, 74 HP, still gets one, and Toronto couldn't have been any further back.
You're never safe from the tire unless you're in spawn. Zone now. Gladiators Legion really started to eke ahead that lead. Dalton lurking with this Tracer, wants to make his way forward. He's got to be careful. He doesn't want to just walk out into the open for Corey to be able to get that headshot. He's been spotted out by Gods.
And for Legion here, one thing they can do is they can take advantage of the Supercharger, right? Wait, fight around Panker, and that's what they do. They drop the Supercharger, but they already lose two on the flanks. The fight is not taking place around Panker, and that is quite bad. Toronto, a well-executed flank, gets the kills they need, and they're going to retake this point.
will retake the point now. It's at 99% for the Legion. They just need to win one more team fight, and now we're seeing swap-offs. Panker is in full-on serious mode. He has swapped off onto the Winston. He wants to deal with Nero and Dalton.
Now you get to see my true form, is basically what you're saying here. And/or activate the trap card. Pick your anime trope. Either way, he's on the Winston here. Legion going to what's they're usually going to Blase, almost picked off, still low. Healed up in the moment, just gets that health pack in the nick of time, and gets Dalton! What a one-on-one that was going on there. And now, Legion with a 6-on-5 advantage. Panker zoning people out of the fight. 200 HP, getting focused, but he gets out just in the nick of time.
Makes it over to the Mega Health Pack, so he will stay alive, and Nero finds nothing with this blade, and that's what they were banking on now. Dalton, he does have, of course, that Pulse Bomb to use. He's trying to focus down Panker now, who does have the Orb on him, but it's Blase coming in with the Riptire, taking out Nero. Axiom still alive with the Primal Rage, though.
Meanwhile, respawns are coming back in. Dalton back into the fight after dying to Blase earlier. Moving in and around. Overtime progress for both teams. Whoever wins this fight takes the round. And Toronto Esports looking resurgent with Guardian and Dalton getting into the back line. We're going to a round 3.
What a back and forth affair there. Both teams just opting by the end of that to go for the dive. Of course, Panker, yeah, definitely not looking as comfortable on that Orisa. I mean, it's such a passive hero to play. He wants to be able to get in. He wants to make those shot calls where he just chunks down someone like Shu or Cruz on the opposite end. He's not afforded that same opportunity when he's playing that Orisa. We saw how differently he gets to play when he's instantly on that Winston. So now we are going over to Village here, and it's going to be Nero once again starting it off with that Pharah, but Blase does have an answer to it on the opposite end. He's going with that Soldier 76.
You know, the funny part there is I think Pooks, to a degree, was like, hey, Blase, would you like to go Pharah? I'm on Mercy, let's do it. And it's like, no. No, I would not. Please go to Lucio. So change up happening at the very end. And it will be Pharah on one side, a 76 on the other. And I actually like this response here from Toronto, where it makes Panker at least think twice about engages. And again, look at where these rockets are. Focused on tanks first and foremost here early on. Just looking for Panker's body, trying to just open up. And now Toronto just moving in with Nero. It's a very nice engage here early on. They've landed plenty of good poke damage, but Guardian is finding himself focused in on the other side. Guardian low, Nero low. Toronto having to back up a bit. Nero gets a moment of breather here, and Rolf under pressure in the back. Is he gonna fall? He does! Axiom gets him. The flankers of Toronto do their work.
They do, and they're only able to trade away. It's a 2-for-1 now as Toronto have control. It's Gladiators Legion who was able to actually flip the point first. Pulse Bomb comes out, stuck to the wall, dropped the Lucio low, but they don't have the follow-up damage quite yet. Nero getting the DMEC onto God now. That's going to be weapons free for him as he's over the top, coming in with these rockets.
Moving back in, protected by D.Va. It's a nice combination here. Toronto starting to get control here on the point. Nero, so much room to work with. Splash after splash, and the Pharah play works out. Toronto Esports have the Legion on the back foot.
And
but
oh, go ahead.
It is worth noting, Legion did get control in the melee there before the fight was even over, so 25%, it's not the worst.
Yeah, this is where you want to be as that Pharah. You want to be on the defensive end. You don't want to try and go for the retake with the Pharah. It's so much more difficult now. Nero still sitting with that barrage. If you can find the proper angle, as you see Blase right now, he does want that high ground. He wants to be able to push out, but we do have the sound barrier early coming up from Toronto.
Early barrier from Toronto, and Nero being so passive in the back, didn't like what he saw, not able to get advantage of it. Meanwhile, Guardian focused down, barrier or no, the Legion looking resurgent, Crew's already out, and Nero, if you're gonna make it rain, maybe do it another day. The weather report said sunny, and you're back to spawn.
Yeah, he could have just gone for that barrage there. Sure, he would have fallen, but Shu should have been able to res that back into it. That early sound barrier, though, was a little bit questionable coming out from Toronto as Gladiators Legion kind of like rope-a-dope them, jumped to the point even though they had a few members coming out from the high ground there. So now Gladiators Legion taking the lead, 40%. They've also got, of course, the ultimate advantage with 4 online.
Well, the advantage they have right now is one of compositions, too. This is a hard area for Pharah to get in on. It's much easier if you're defending. He got good enough poke there early on. Panker, once more under focus. Healed back up by the Transcendence in time, and meanwhile, it's Blase, so much room to work with. Gets Axiom. Gonna be chasing D.Va off the point, and it's a Transcendence from Rolf. Well-timed that kept Gladiators alive, and Toronto, they thought they had an opening there.
They did commit a lot into that, though. It was the tactical visor, the Pulse Bomb along with that Transcendence now, so Toronto might be able to swing this in their favor. They've got a lot of explosives, a lot of ordnance on the field there with the barrage, but Nero isn't able to find the opening, and this is the trouble that Pharah is fine trying to get in on Village.
Yeah, that's why you'll usually swap off the Pharah when you're trying to get back in on Village, and Blase taken out of the sky by Blase. Maybe he'll get rezzed back up here, but now you see Dalton moving back the other way. Shu will be bringing Nero back up. Dalton working on the outskirts, not too bad, gets a stick, but it's Corey and Gods on the other end doing enough work. It's not decisive for the Legion. Oh, Nero though, that's decisive. Toronto takes down 2 off the barrage. They're still in it.
They are still in it now. 40% for Toronto Esports. Gladiators, Legion, they're gonna have to reset. They can try to get 2 fights out of this. Try to get his Valkyrie out. That would be great for them going into the next fight now. As we are now at 50% for Toronto. They're gonna try and make their hold here up against Gladiators.
Legion moving on in. Panker leading the way, has Primal Rage up, doesn't use it here just yet. Just going to take it slow. Now he uses the Rage after Guardian is down. Moving in and around. Again, the other Winston into sights, gets knocked back quite a bit, and yet still does enough. It's Blase and Gods on the flank that made a lot of that happen. As Blase, another tack visor, gun shoe out of the skies, and that should be enough for the Legion retake. It's gonna be their round here, barring a miracle for Toronto. Overtime goes away, and the Legion take map 1.
And yeah, we're seeing the difference of what happens when you have Panker, of course, on the Winston, of course, instead of playing that Theresa. He's able to stay proactive and just do so much damage with it.
Absolutely. You guys talked about Nero holding on to Pharah, which was kind of an interesting call to you guys. You were talking about how it's a little bit more difficult to play her effectively in Village, but he still managed to get a barrage off.
Well, so here's the thing on Pharah and Village. Pharah is fine on Village in the first fight, and she's fine when you're holding. She's not as good when you're coming back in, and look, okay, you can get a barrage off there, great. The problem is that it's very difficult to go in and actually approach the fight in the way you want from that scenario. Teams still do it, but historically, Pharah's at her best on Village when you're holding and in that first fight.
Yeah, and it's so easy, especially if you got of course, the Mercy along with the Zenyatta there. You just throw the Orb of Discord on her and damage boost to Soldier 76. Generally, you know, it's very little chip damage, but once you have all that damage amplification on, that Pharah goes down so quickly.
So one of the things that we saw was Dalton putting in a lot of work. So let's take a look at this. This is Dalton on Widowmaker. We're in Sanctum. Why don't you break this down for us a little bit?
Oh, it's very simple. Good sight lines and landing shots where you're a Widowmaker, you're not under pressure at all. The only way that this doesn't work out for you is if you're not able to hit your shots. And if you're a good Widowmaker, those are the situations you thrive in because guess what? You can hit those shots. You can move in, hit shot after shot and go, by the way, guys, you have to respect me. I'm a Widow in the back.
Yeah, I mean, it's very similar to how we saw Nepal earlier on. It was instead of a Junkrat and Widowmaker, this time it was a Pharah and a Widowmaker. So the Pharah just forces them out from behind that Orisa shield, allowing Dalton to get those headshots. And that's why you do have to be careful running into that kind of composition.
We noticed, we talked about Dalton's Widowmaker just then, but as far as the team, we're going into map selection, so it's Numbani. That's where we're going with this next. But to get back to Dalton, it was the teamwork on both sides is really kind of what is going to, I think, decide this, because you guys always talk about the mechanical skill, just raw mechanical skill of them, and to me, I mean, I know I'm not as well versed in this as you guys, but they look pretty evenly matched depending on the role.
They definitely did, although the thing that really surprised me coming in here is that, so we saw a team finally go with the strategy of, okay, we're going to focus Panker more. We're going to not let Panker do everything he wants to do. The problem here is that Corey had just immense pressure with Blase on the flank, so if you weren't paying as much attention to the flankers, the Legion flankers actually were just punishing over and over again, and they were playing up at a level easily comparable to Nero and Dalton here, so I don't know if flanker skill is something that Toronto can look at and be like, yeah, we'll beat you here, because Corey and Blase were putting on a show.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I actually made a note of was specifically how well their flanks were being supported on both sides, especially with Toronto. Dalton's Tracer was supported on that flank repeatedly to where he was being able to get so far behind everybody without any real risk to himself to be able to get back out. And on the other end, the shot calling for Winston or for Panker on Winston.
Yeah. I mean, we saw there when we were on Shrine, that initial dive onto Shu, it was a blind one. He just jumped over the ledge, and he knew that the Zenyatta was there, so someone made that call for him. He had it perfectly locked on, and so that's the coordination that we're seeing out of Gladiators. While Toronto, they don't have to coordinate as much because, well, their singular game plan is try to kill Pinker.
Yeah.
But the thing is, Pinker's walking away with trades, and that's fine, especially if he gets the support off of it.
Yeah, I mean, Pinker right now, his motto is worth. That's pretty much the game plan he's in right now, at least while he's this big of a target.
When it comes to trades, what is considered like a better trade or a worse trade?
Well, it depends on what's being traded out, what heroes are going for, whether you're attack or defense. If you're defending on points, for example, not in control, but say if you're on hybrid or if you are on assault and you are a defense and you trade 1-for-1, no matter who gets traded out, so long as they didn't have an ult or something, it's usually pretty good because your respawn is much closer than the other team. So it's very contextual, based on the situation.
Yeah, the context is definitely important. If you take out a support right as their tank line is low, that is a great trade to make because, well, the tanks are going to die eventually anyhow. So going after Shu with that focus that Gladiators have had up against them, I think that has been a really good factor for them.
All right, very cool. We're going to be getting into games soon, but I want to talk about what we can expect here on Numbani before we get in.
Well, going Numbani, of course, Numbani is the lab of Overwatch, is where teams sometimes experiment. We haven't seen as much experimentation as you normally would in Overwatch lore from Numbani, but one thing that's very clear is that, generally speaking, if a team is able to get through first, they get through second pretty quickly. It's sort of, how is your last point defense? How do you deal with teams in that situation? And also, how do you stall the bleeding a little bit in second, which is one of the hardest points to defend in all of Overwatch.
And for a team that has such a good dive like the Gladiators, it's kind of worrying that Toronto want to take them to Numbani because this is where Pinker can really go off, especially on the first point offense. That's where Dalton and Nero are really going to get tested. I'm looking towards for the side of Toronto for Nero to once again go back onto that Pharah and try to play up against them that way. Try to avoid Pinker and just get that long range poke and then allow his team to try and finish off Pinker. But still, again, you're leaving your supports vulnerable on the ground. Shu has to be very careful about his positioning when they go on the offense.
And to the note about Pinker, Numbani is also a map that has plenty of areas that you can really surprise people on ambushes or otherwise. And we've seen it with him here on this map in particular, where he will catch supports off in just about every fight. So to a degree, you have to respect the idea that if you look behind a corner, there might be an angry scientist there.
All right, well, let us see if angry scientists lurk around every corner of Numbani. Here we are getting into Map 2, Gladiators Legion v Toronto Esports.
You know, you don't really want to visit Numbani this time of year. Lucio's not in concert anymore. Just not worth.
Yeah, the Doomfix exhibit is gone too. I don't know, Numbani's just kind of gone downhill.
It is incredibly boring compared to where it used to be, but apparently this coffee shop is pretty good. That's the most I could say about it.
Airport security not that great either. Yeah, Numbani is supposed to be, I guess, a pleasant place to visit, but I don't know. There's a lot of violence now. But we're about to see more violence. Toronto Esports on the offense up against Gladiators Legions. The defense is going to be Blase once again on that Soldier 76. He had a great round on Nepal there. We'll see. The dive coming out from Toronto is going to be good enough to try and dislodge him here from the high ground.
Right now, you see the tank sticking the other end. Oh, Dalton in quickly gets Blase even faster. What an early pickup. Let's pick up the other end. Both supports down. The counter dive. What more can you ask for? And Winston in the right place at the right time.
That was such a quick push coming out from Toronto, but Pinker just absolutely destroyed them. And that's what we were talking about, right? On the offense, Toronto have to be careful when they push up and go for that dive because Shu and Cruz are going to be very vulnerable, and Pinker showed off why.
He leapt in and got both supports, and what should have been a really good early pickoff on Blase, it's like, yeah, guys, I have to tell you, we lost both our Zenyatta and our Lucio in the first 2 seconds. Winston breaking the barriers here, but now you look to Pinker hiding here in the back. Toronto actually being very methodical, not immediately full diving in here. So they're biding their time, they're waiting. Meanwhile, you have Dalton on the back line. That's why, but they lose Axiom. They finally decide to dive in and they get bisected here early on, but the early blade from Nero charged it up super quickly. Gets one, gets two, darting in around both supports down for the Legion, and yet the Legion still holding on.
Yeah, you got Winston, you got Diva along with the Tracer there. There's so much longevity to hold on to. And so now Toronto Esports. That's one thing we didn't actually get to mention, that Pooks is on this Ana. So this is just Panker City. He's going to be receiving that nano boost every single time.
Which gives him Primal Rage more often, where he's one of the most deadly Winstons at getting kills with Primal Rage. So yeah, there's plenty of synergy there, beyond the fact that Ana's just better on longer sightlines. But you see Panker has a Primal Rage here early in this fight. He's going to dive in, try and eat as much damage as possible, then Primal. Toronto, meanwhile, they're just focused on getting at the point. They move in, they almost have a tick here. Panker on the side, Primal Rage pop, Blaze's down. Gonna make something happen here. He's looking for the edge, but doesn't have the greatest opening, but what a sleep! Diva slept, he goes back in, finds Shu, unable to be protected by Cruz as Cruz runs for his life, and his life isn't there.
Gods is there to back Panker up too, creating so many windows for him. Corey was finally able to find Axim, who's trying to hide in that corner there, trying to take the TVT now, has to back away, but Blaze back into this fight. And so Corey will ultimately fall, but at least he drew them away from the points now. During that time, though, Toronto did secure 2 ticks on to point A.
Legion was not super well composed there, and in fact, they're going to be working at disadvantage if Toronto can go in now. They have a 6-on-5 window here, and it's going to be up to Nero. Nero, early blade, dives in, gets one, looking for more, and oh my god, Panker from behind shuts him down with the nano boosted Winston. Just when you think Nero's going to have a good time of it, he gets electrocuted from the back. Yeah, Toronto Esports still making this reasonable. Pooks and Blaze are down. Panker ends up falling, though. It's Dalton's playground right now. We're just living in it, going in and around. As Corey gonna try and bring this back, but not gonna happen.
Yeah, finally they are able to break that. Gladiators Legion, they just had nothing else to work with. I believe it was just Pooks who had that nano boost, put it onto Panker, but Toronto Esports had everything else. Now, we are seeing some swap-offs. Cruz will be picking up the Mercy for the offense.
I also think the swap here, the 76, is very good, just in the sense that Genji has issues with Winston to a degree anyways, especially when one like Panker. So going to 76 is going to let Nero play further back, lay more damage into the tanks. It's a good swap.
Now Dalton on the lurk as the defense have already pushed up. So he's trying to get into the back, but he doesn't see any supports. They are all on the high ground, so he is going to rotate on over. On top of Soldier 76, throws out the pulse bomb, does not connect.
They just weren't where people... They weren't where Dalton thought they were at the beginning. Uh-oh. Okay, space-time has been reestablished here. Pooks is going to fall. Toronto Esports taking advantage of that space-time bubble, and we got a pause.
Yeah, it's just wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff, yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Let's break it. Frozen.
Yeah.
Thought that he was dropped.
It's his remix. It's just a remix. Okay, so first off, that Dalton and Panker counter dive right out of the gate was interesting.
Well, it was interesting because you had Dalton on one side who was able to take down Blaze, and you're like, oh, this is going to be good. And then Panker goes, oh, no, 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 no. This is how you dive. And you just, you hear the sounds of Cruz throwing his headset against the wall. It's like, how did he kill both of us?
I'm the dive champion now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was bad. Okay, so the other thing that was really, I feel like Nero, turned his back on Panker just for, 1 millisecond. And that's too long that I'm noticing with this guy. He pulled out the Dragon Blade. He was looking to get some business done and then got 1 kill. But he moved right past Panker, so he had to have been aware that he was there.
Like, as a Genji, you just kind of want to avoid Winston's anyhow, especially if they're going to receive the nano boost from Pooks. And as a Genji, you're just not going to kill that.
Yeah, that's my point. It's like he saw him and he's still engaged over there. I'd have been on the other side of the map.
Well, he also had to go for squishy targets, right?
Yeah.
There are points where it's just like, look, he understands he's going to get hunted down, but you have targets in front of you you can slice up. So it still wasn't the worst for Nero. Like, yeah, he ended up dying, but he did enough damage that they were able to move forward and still take control of the fight. It's more just the hilarity of, oh, yeah, Panker's just nano boosted behind you.
Yeah, it's like every time they get something done, he's like, hang on a second, guys.
I got this. I got this.
Oh, we're back in game. All right, let's get back right to the action.
The space-time continuum has been restored, but the Legion have not. Toronto taking advantage of the situation there. I'm not sure if they would have gone that way anyways, but the point is that they have a gift, and I'm not sure if the Legion even try and defend this.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be able to make it back in time if they do. It is a risky proposition, to say the least. They're just going to back away and give it away. Toronto Esports now with 3.5 minutes to complete out this map, but we've talked about it before. Numbani third, be a tough beast to crack.
Bonnie third. This is where teams are made on the Bonnie. It's where the real fight begins. And look at that. The coordination between Corey and Panker. They get Dalton down immediately. in the fight. They were going for sports. They got Tracer said. By the way, Primal Rage, Cruz knocked in and about just for good measure. That is a clean team fight win for Legion.
You could see the decision making by Panker. He had that leap and he was like, should I go in on this diva? All right, yeah, I will. Bats him around just a little bit, but that does also mean that Shu will be able to heal that up, get some much needed ultimate charge here. It's pretty even with Toronto just eking out a lead. Dalton will have that pulse bomb up, but it's Corey in the back with his.
All right, and Nero blown up immediately. Corey moving around the outskirts here. And Panker got focused, got out pretty early in this fight. Still getting focused, still able to go back in the round. Nero brought back up, Toronto still with options as Corey takes a rocket to the grill. Suddenly, Toronto Esports, options, attack visor up from Nero. But just Panker in his face stopped him from shooting anything relevant, ended up ending his life. And Toronto now trying to fight their way back from the brink. And though they get Roof and Blase, they still have to deal with the tanks, but they're doing just that as Axia puts Gods against the wall.
Yeah, he just corners him there. Now Pooks should be the next one to fall. He's actually fancying his chances up against Guardian. He will fall for that. And as Dalton cleans up Panker, we're gonna be able to snowball into this next fight. Gladiators, they have to be careful when they come out because they do have some great ultimates to try to go into this Blade and Barrier. Try and put a stop to the momentum of Toronto.
Well, to be more precise, Toronto has to be careful here. They have nothing. Legion have everything. The question is, how much do they need to use? You see the focus fire on Panker in the beginning. Already bring him down to half. If you could get him to use Primal here, it would be good, just because the Legion probably want to open here with Barrier Blade. There's Barrier, there's Blade. Let's say already into the back, looking for targets. And Toronto, to their credit, it's a pretty good disengage, but Shu, your hiding place, not so great.
Yeah, did you know that Genji can double jump over vending machines and slash you down? Well, Shu does know now, as Corey just trying to get that final elimination onto Axiom, but Axiom will survive into this. So Toronto Esports is coming down to the wire. They were just short of finishing it off here on third. 1 minute left for them.
I think for Toronto, the ideal engage here is they're going to want to go in, have Cruz Valkyrie really early on, and then aggressively blow up Panker if he tries anything crazy. But Corey, speaking of trying things crazy, super deep into the enemy line, able to be supported by his tanks, ends up living. Cruz at the Valkyrie, but the Valkyrie isn't before the fight's engaged. It's mid-fight here. Nero under pressure in the back. It was Panker on him, still on him. Goodbye, see ya. Take a trip to the mean streets of Nambani.
Honestly, though, Panker has just had a one-track mind on this map, just taking out Nero over and over again, especially once they got here to third. Nero has had very little room to breathe at all, but Gladiators, they did use a lot into that Transcendence along with that Primal Rage now, so they're going to be relying upon Gods with that self-destruct to try and stall out this point up until Blase and along Pooks. They'll have that Blade Barrier.
All right, last opportunity here for Toronto to get through Nambani third, something that's very difficult for teams. Nero can have attack visor up here in a moment, but he has a monkey in his face instead. Backing up, in peril, 29 HP and dead. The coordination between Corey and Panker once more on point. 3-1 in favor of the Legion, and Toronto, despite having resources, just not able to get the engage they want. You might blow up two, but how much can that buy you here? Perhaps more than expected as Guardian takes down 3. The script is being rewritten as Toronto Esports still is alive.
It's both tanks and the passive healing of the payload keeping them topped off right now. Buying enough time now, we do have, of course, the tactical visor from Nero, but he's just chunking into the tank line of Gladiators Legion as they're buying time for the rest of the team. They got a full 6-man sound barrier along with Blade. Blase into the back.
Blase in the back, forces out the Transcendence. For all that's going on, Corey takes down 2. Blase moving in. How long can you praise Zenyatta? Not enough to save you here. Shu falls in the end. The round is over, and the Legion hold on third.
It was just so rough to watch from Nero's point of view. Every time Panker was on top of him, all of a sudden, Corey was also there, instantly getting 2v1 down.
And we give a lot of credit to Panker, but credit where credit is due to Corey, where I don't think Corey was as well coordinated with his tanks earlier in the season as he is now, where it's just every time 2 people in on a squishy target in the back. And bear in mind, this was Nero's pick to be safer relative to his Genji pick. So rough times for Toronto.
If you leave yourself as a stationary target there, even though you have Shu and Cruz, Corey along with Panker can blow them up rather quickly if they don't prioritize the healing onto the proper target, which is the difficulty that Toronto has been finding here. Once they get dove upon, they need to be able to prioritize the proper target, which it's generally Nero who's been going down in these fights.
And Nero, I mean, why wouldn't you focus him, right? Relative to everyone else, do you want to chase around Dalton? Not so much. I mean, Shu has been playing pretty reasonably far in the back, but Nero's sort of that happy medium. It's like, yeah, we can get on him. We can take care of him. And it was particularly brutal in that last fight because Nero did have Tac Visor up, but difficult to get anything done for that when you have a Winston in your face and a Tracer at the back.
Yeah, Shu definitely learned his lesson from Nepal. Stand far back. Do you think that's safe? Okay, stand further back because Panker will find you. So after their first attack here, it is going to be now Gladiators Legion looking for their dive. While Toronto Esports, of course, they are going to have Nero on that Soldier 76, but different from the Gladiators Legion defense, Cruz is going to be picking up the Mercy.
Cruz on the Mercy, and we'll see how this works out here. Obviously gives them a little bit more power to get back up after early pickoffs, but the problem with the Legion is that they're so aggressive after you get one. How are you going to get a res off in most cases? I'm not really sure.
Yeah, the coordination, when they find a different target after their dive, has been so quick coming up from Legion now. There's just going to be a standard dive onto the high ground coming out from the Legion here. They go onto the high ground, wait out their cooldowns, and then jump right on to Nero. He's got to be careful. There it is. The dive comes out. They have force onto low ground. Corey wins the TBT against Dalton.
Yeah, so while they're diving Nero, Corey's beating up Dalton on the other side. They already have the one-man advantage, and Toronto, now they're just playing with time, right? They're going to try and wait for respawns to come in. They know they have a little bit to give. 2 ticks are gone, but now they need to move in. You've lost your margin for error. You've already lost Guardian as well, so you're down a tank here early on. You're getting pushed back, and that's it. I think they're going to give this one up. They have to.
Yeah, that was just calculated, measured aggression coming out from Legion. They got the DMEC and instantly went back onto the point. They did not over-aggress there. Now, this is where they get to go aggressive. They almost brought down Axiom. He makes it back, but it's okay. The payload is still getting activated here, making its way across this corner.
And Toronto, they're going to be even more aggressive here, right? Where this is one of the only 2 places you can hold on second and Bonnie. This is probably the best area for the defense, believe it or not, despite its proximity to spawn, because it's more defensible terrain-wise.
Yeah, and they want to make sure they get a second opportunity to defend also. Now Corey was spotted out, Dalton in the back trying to go after Panker, but he does see that the orb is on him. He is not going to be able to finish off that elimination. Now Blase with the blade, he's going to push forward.
Dalton moving forward, or Blase moving forward, holding on to the blade, not using it yet. Panker, Primal Rage is here. As low as he gets, Transcendent's going to bring him right back up. Transcendent is nice, heals up both tanks as Blase just cuts down Dalton in the back. And here comes the blade, Cruz, his target. Cruz going to dash away. Meanwhile he goes, I'll go on Winston. Might have been a bad choice though. Primal Rage saves him, and Toronto starting to turn it the other way as Nero burns it on with the Tac Visor in the back. Falls, but the damage has kind of been done. But as Corey says, the fight's not over till I say it's over. Moves in and around. This is back and forth as it gets.
But it's just both tanks on the point for Toronto Esports. Now they are getting cleaned up. Gonna get DMEC'd is Guardian, then destroyed. Corey actually just staggering this Diva as long as he can now. So Gladiators Legion walk away with that team fight win. But because Toronto took that fight so early on, they will have an opportunity to come in to defend if they want to.
The problem here is that they don't have anything that would really let them get back out here. Normally you want to transcend out, and no, Toronto, I think they're saying, nah, not where. Oh no! It's the worst case scenario. Not only do they not delay, but Axiom just feeds. Oh, that is bad.
Miscommunication, coordination issues, I don't know what to call it at that point. Shu is swapping off for Toronto as he goes over to the Moira now.
Axiom just proudly declares to his team, I defend payloads. Like, no, don't defend the payload. Don't do this in this situation. And now they get around the corner for free. That is what happens when you have that level of miscommunication that might have gone on there as Corey goes to the back here, looking for his opportunity. Nero under pressure. Is he gonna get away? No, it's Blase and Baker dealing with him in the moment. Corey moving around. And this is looking very good for the Legion as they start applying pressure.
They are self-destruct used, and it does catch out Rolf. And with that, Toronto will be able to stabilize in this fight as they back away. Gladiators Legion get picked off. And so now it's still an uphill battle for Toronto. There's 4 minutes and 20 seconds left. And you have to remember, Toronto, they did not finish out the map. They were just short of it here. So Gladiators Legion can just end it.
This is actually going to be the best option coming up here for the Legion that they will have, where you take a look at this up to the fight. They're about to dive in. They have 3 ultimates, almost 4. Wolf is going to build up the Transcendence mid-fight. Toronto, they need Dalton to pick someone off early or Axiom to do something crazy. Meanwhile, you have Corey on the setup. They're moving on in. Toronto just hiding here. Barrier up, not engaging here just yet, but now the Legion, you have to go in, right? You have the Transcendence. Rolf under pressure. Is he going to transcend? No, not yet. Blase is also under pressure, holds. There's the Transcend, though. They move on in. Panker gets that 2 kills for the Legion, and they still have the Blade in reserve.
They still have the Blade, but it's Panker doing all the damage now. Gets away with 70 HP. Now the self-destruct will be used by Guardian just to try and stall them out. He's able to make it back into the mech, but instantly he is demeched. Sound barrier just to keep Baby Diva alive for now, but she will fall to Corey. Blase with the Blade doing enough damage for the team.
They've done enough damage, but they also haven't taken this to the limit here just yet. Toronto's been able to withstand a lot. All the ultimates have been used. Pooks is going to get a late barrier up here, and does he drop? No, not in time! Not in time! Doesn't hit the ground. That would have been big for the Legion, but instead Pooks is back in spawn. Toronto is trying to hold on here as it's Rolf taking down 2. A killing machine is Zen in the back right now. Now it's Moira of all people tries to dive him, doesn't work out, and the Legion still making most of it here, but Nero off the respawn deals with the tanks, and Toronto has withstood the storm.
Somehow, just narrowly, 4 meters. Gladiators Legion, they were so close to finishing this out, getting the second map. But despite Rolf's just dead-eye accuracy, Nero had better, coming back with that Soldier 76, just laying waste to the Legion. But now, coming into this next fight, Corey will have another pulse bomb. Rolf, of course, with all the damage he dished out, he'll have another Transcendence, along with Panker having that Primal Rage.
Well, that's the key point here. Transcend, far more useful to winning fight than Coalescence. She was going to open the early Coalescence here. I mean, there's no reason why you wouldn't. Corey has the bomb up. You see the multi-flank approach coming in here. Corey on the payload, the rest from the other side. Early Coalescence up. Rolf transcends before getting picked off. Baited the dive in just long enough. Nero getting bounced in the back. Panker doesn't like what he sees, ends up backing out. It was Pooks who got caught by the tack visor. Now Toronto can move back in. The Transcendence is gone. Dalton, deep diving, looking for more. Panker in his sights. Does the beast die? No, he gets out, but it's enough. Toronto has another defense.
And they got the demect. Never mind. Shu just finishes off Gods. He could have tried to stall that out a little bit longer. The Gods will have the self-destruct into this next fight, and that's all they're really working with. Blase does actually have the Blade, but he doesn't have much else behind it. They're going to have that sound barrier coming out from Cruz. Of course, if Cruz can just get one good boop, Blase won't be able to do much at all now. They can even use Guardian self-destruct just to try and zone him away. So they're setting up Blase on the high ground. He's looking for a prime target, but he doesn't see anything but the tank line ahead of him.
Blase waiting for his opportunity, hoping that someone forces the barrier out of Cruz first. He's waiting on the outskirts. Barrier not used yet. The Legion just waiting. God's in trouble. Gonna have to self-destruct to get back in. Barrier out on both sides. Blase, Blade finally coming out, and he's using it to demech Diva here off the Discord orb. That's enough. You get rid of the Diva here early on. Guardian's been very good for them, but now they're gonna have to fight this back without rule. It's an advantage in tanks, a disadvantage in supports. Corey moving in and around, going up, and no, he's just gone back. Gladiators didn't like what they saw.
Yeah, definitely, especially when it comes down to this critical time, 40 seconds left. That's why Toronto are getting aggressive. They want to try and find one more pick. Almost gave up Axiom for that. He will survive. Most importantly, that's ultimate charge going over to Cruz and Shu. Shu does have that coalescence once again into this fight. Gladiators Legion are struggling to find anything. Rolf will have the Transcendence, but they need more firepower behind it.
Toronto Esports 15 seconds away from a great defense here on Numbani. Narrow, attack visor up again. He's gotten consistent value out of it. Shu leads with the Coalescence. They focus down Gods. Narrow finishes him off. Attack visor in play. Legion have to give it space. 5 seconds though, how much space can they give? Now, they get to come back the other way. Sound Bear out from Pooks, does not hit the entire team. Panker has to Primal Rage early. Blase's gonna be coming back to fight late, but Toronto has had a chance to fully re-establish. Do they get the demech on the Guardian? They do! He's demeched, here comes the Blade. Blase looking for more, into the back. Not able to get anywhere near as much as he wants, but no, that's what he gets, both tanks at the end. It's enough towards the very end, turns the corner, gets 2, but they still gotta deal with Nero and Dalton, who are still fighting us back for Toronto.
Nero and Dalton still alive. That's a third frag. Panker has gone down. They might have just bought enough time. Sound barrier will definitely, as Nero cleans up Blase. Gods is gone, and somehow Toronto holding on. They will tie it up here on Numbani, 1-1 up against the Legion.
You look exhausted there. That was got really intense at the end.
Well, Toronto is one of those things where they weren't really expecting to have a crazy defense, and then over and over again they were able to withstand. And I would just go back to the fight where there were so many ults up for the Legion, and they were winning, but they weren't dominating. They were getting enough kills to sort of make it look like it was going to go well, but Toronto was able to stagger really well. And every time that Toronto needed someone to come in big, it was Nero on the 76 that did enough.
Yeah, speaking of Nero on the 76, the thing about Numbani third that makes it so difficult for dive compositions is that, well, you do have the spawn doors on the left and the right, and Soldier 76s love to hold on the right-hand side. If a dive comes out, he just runs into spawn. He's safe, and of course, they've wasted their time, and now they leave themselves vulnerable there. And so that's why we see Nero coming in and out of spawn, just diving away from them. There we go. This time he's on the right-hand side, but at any time, if he's in danger, he's able to just run away. And so Nero just set up perfectly with the Soldier 76.
Worked out very well for him here, and it's also a testament to how difficult it can be to get through point 3 Numbani. Point 3 Numbani basically on the same level as things like point 2 Dorado is right now, where you can't guarantee yourself as a team that you're going to be able to get through there, as we saw where both teams held each other off from last. But the difference, of course, was evident as Toronto held just a little bit further.
Yeah, it looked like Toronto had a little bit, I wouldn't say an easy time by any stretch of the word, but they were more adept at mitigating Panker's damage, especially in that point 3.
Yeah, definitely. Winston jumps in. He's got all the orbs on him. The damage mitigation, the healing does not make up for the damage amplification onto him, and so he will get melted down regardless of the pocket.
Well, the other thing, too, is that it's also not the best area for Panker's playstyle, where Panker is very good at sort of coming in from awkward angles, using terrain to his advantage. It's a very wide open area, that last area in Numbani, that's not a lot of like crazy Winston ambushes you can do from the perspective of the offense. So I think a lot of what gives him strength was kind of not there, and it's more just that's how last point in Numbani is. It's difficult for the offense.
I think also what would help with strength is working out at the Old Spice hand gym. We're going to commercial. We'll be back in just a minute with more action. Stay tuned.